Kia ora koutou, I'm Sean Davis, an Enterprise Advisor at Venture Taranaki, and you're joining us for another Ahead of the Curve webinar brought to you by Venture Taranaki in partnership with the Regional Business Partners Network. We've created this webinar series to bring crisp and practical advice from local experts to support your business. So if this is the first time you're tuning in, you can see all our previous recordings at our website or Facebook page. Please just search Ahead of the Curve. We continue to support thousands of enterprises across Taranaki issuing funding that can be used towards professional services, such as you'll be hearing today from Baker Tilly. So if you're needing support, please get in touch with us at business.taranaki.info. Now today, we have Julie Rowlands, Julia Stockman, and Mel Whiting from Baker Tilly discussing a year of two halves, understanding and forming a culture of engagement and performance. As always, we have Adam Harris here joining to help facilitate the session. Over to you, Adam, to kickstart.
Fantastic. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another one in our series. A couple of things for you. I can see some regular faces that are already on, but if you haven't used it, or just as a reminder, a couple of things I just want to point out to you from a technology perspective. So, top right-hand corner, you'll see something which will either say speaker view or gallery view. What I'd like you to do is to just go to gallery view. This will give you the opportunity to see all 5 panelists so that when we get into the Q&A piece, then you'll be able to see everybody. Second thing I want to tell you about is the chat box. If you could just go down to the bottom, click on the chat box, and what you'll see is that it will pop up probably on the right-hand side. In the to box, if you could just put in all panelists and attendees, this will give you the chance and the opportunity to just type in very different things. The first thing I'd like you to type in that box is just put your name and who you are and where you're from. That will just let everybody else know on the webinar who is in attendance today. And the last thing is the Q&A box. If you can click on the Q&A box, this is a pop-up box, and this will give you the chance to put in questions that you want to ask our panelists. I would encourage you to put the questions in as quickly and as soon as they come to mind. And as we go through the first part of the session, it will allow our other panelists that aren't talking to be answering your questions on the go. Remember, this is about you and this is about us answering your questions. We're going to have the panelists will be speaking for about 30 minutes, and then we'll get into a live Q&A and go through some of the questions that you've had and you need answering. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Julie, who's going to introduce Baker Tilly and start the presentation off. Julie.
Wonderful. So I'm just having trouble sharing the screen. So I'm not sure what's happened here.
Have you got your PowerPoint, Julie?
Yeah, something's happened.
There we go. And then if you just click on from the beginning. So you click on share screen again.
Hang on, where's it gone? Share screen. Is it there?
No, not yet.
I don't know what's happened.
There we go. It's sharing now. And then if you just click on the, yep, there we go, from the beginning.
Ah, there it is.
There we go.
Sorry about that. I had multiple screens up and was getting a little bit confusing. Hey, thanks for the opportunity anyway to be in this webinar and to talk about things that are very very dear to our heart. And we work in a lot of organisations throughout New Zealand, really focusing on leadership and culture. So the team of us are the organisation team, which is part of the Baker Tilly network, Baker Tilly Staples Rodway, which is based in New Plymouth, and we provide business advisory services to clients in many industries and sectors. And today's presentation is really it's about us focusing on culture and why it is so important for your organisation, and particularly some of the things that you need to and potentially should be thinking about as we return to work And I think after, you know, Jacinda's announcement yesterday, it's become even more critical that we start to think about our culture going forward. So some interesting points that we wanted to focus on first is that as at 23rd of March, you know, your culture left the building. So we walked out the door and everybody returned to their homes and their safe place. And so the culture walked out the door, left the building, because the culture belongs to the people. You know, it's the way we behave with each other. It's our networks. It's our interactions with each other. It's how we celebrate success. And so it left the building. And at the moment, it's kind of forming and developing in our homes. And, you know, so we had to move to that high trust environment where, you know, suddenly a lot of you as leaders needed to start to be really flexible and adaptable. So you had to think about, you know, how do we enable this remote working? What is it going to look like? And heck, maybe we were frightened of doing that before because we wanted to have people in the building. So really new cultures forming in homes across the city. And those cultures are going to be different because different individuals from your businesses are networking with each other. So those relationships that existed in, you know, before, and those mindsets and those behaviors, that they're all starting to change. And the mindsets that we're forming are being developed and, you know, are being created in the interactions that we're having with everybody from our own business and also in the outside world. So, you know, when people come back, it is going to be different. It's not going to be the same. And so in a lot of ways, this is a real watershed moment, or a huge silver lining, in that we have an opportunity to kind of rebuild, or we call it the new build, you know, to really think about, hey, what is that culture that I want going forward, and what does that need to look like? So in this webinar, what we will focus on is some of the things to be thinking about, culture in the past, what the culture might be forming now, and what are some of the things that are contributing to that, and what you want that culture to potentially look like and feel like as you move into this new way of being. Because, you know, performance and engagement is being affected. We've had many of our clients talk to us about, you know, some of their star performers who were great in the pre-COVID, the 23rd of March, and now, you know, they're disconnected. They're not so interested in the success of your business, or that's how it feels. Maybe they're not wanting to communicate as much. Maybe they're not performing at the level that you would expect. So in a lot of ways, you know, it's very important that we understand what's going on, and it's very important that we don't judge what's going on. So it's being understanding, but it's recognizing too that, you know, the hard stuff's coming in a lot of ways, and that the way we re-emerge and bring your people with you is going to be absolutely critical. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about what culture is. And, you know, when we're working in organizations around culture change, we're always talking about that it's not only the way we do things around here, but it's the why we do it the way we do. So every business that we go in, every organization that we work with, every leader that we interact with, those cultures are really different. And it's the shared values, norms, and expectations that govern the way people actually work with each other. It's the motives and the behaviors that are encouraged, and culture is something shared, you know, and that it belongs to you, but it belongs to all of your team. It's something that you all hold, and it's reinforced by the values which are, you know, underpin the way we work. And so often, you know, we have a great value statement, and we have those on the wall, and we talk about what values are important to us, but actually, how does it play out in your business? You know, we say respect, but do we work with each other respectfully? We talk about openness and honesty, but, you know, is it safe for me to be honest in your business? Or has there been a bit of a hierarchy or a pecking order? So we'll look further at what that culture might look like now, but those things are all contributing to your culture. And the reality is that culture is 8 times more likely to influence your success than strategy alone. And I think that what we do is that we spend a lot of time on our business planning and our strategies, and how do we return to work, but we don't spend enough time thinking about what is the culture that we want in this business, and what do we want it to look like and feel like. So what I'll do now is I'll kind of move on to Julia, who's going to have a bit of a conversation with you about some things that might actually be happening now. that will be impacting on how people feel about your organisation and the culture. So we'll move on to Julia.
Great, thanks Julie. So the past 6 weeks during the time that we had in lockdown alert level 4 and then on to 3, it's been a fantastic time or opportunity for us to pause, reflect and reset ourselves. As a leader, as a business owner, you'll be doing that yourself, as will your people. But also what your people are doing, they are watching and noticing everything that you do at this moment. So that saying, actions speak louder than words, is even more pertinent, even more relevant at this very moment. So as your people have taken the time to pause and reset, they're reflecting themselves and they're thinking about how this whole experience has been for them. They'll be asking themselves, has remote working worked for me? Have I been productive, engaged? Has the organisation, has the business allowed me or enabled me to perform well in my role? And employees are noticing their own sense of connection with the organisation. So as a leader, are the messages that you're giving your people making them feel connected and giving them that sense that they actually really matter to you and to the business? Now, have you truly listened? Have you shown understanding and empathy for their own unique situation at this time? Or maybe unintentionally the message has been that you don't value them, that they don't matter as a result of perhaps a lack of some transparent communications. So for me, culture is human, and the strength of our relationship is really key in this slide. Do you know how your people are feeling right now? And more importantly, do you care? So all of these points will be contributing to your culture right now at this very moment. But as we look to move back into the working environment, into the workplaces, as we are coming down to level 2, it's really critical to think about what the culture was like prior to the 23rd of March. So I'm going to hand over to Mel, who's going to talk to us a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Julia. And I think it's absolutely right. It's such, whilst none of us would have wished this situation, it's such a unique opportunity. And I think what we need to do in order to maximise that opportunity is to learn and grow from it. And so really thinking around understanding what our culture was pre the 23rd of March, you know, was it strong? Was it a culture of learning and sharing and innovation? You know, did we have a lot of accountability and ownership? So that, and what I mean by that is that the whole team or all those people who worked with us or for us really understood our sense of purpose and our why. So what it was all about and why we were here. And did our culture support that? Or was there some things in our culture that actually we'd really like to consider and potentially change? You know, was it that actually we probably had a culture of fear and blame, you know, where people didn't take ownership or responsibility because they were a bit worried. They didn't want to put their head above the parapet because, you know, what might happen to them or you know, would those behaviours be encouraged or not? You know, did we have an environment where we had a lot of high trust, which is the environment we're now operating in with many of us working from home? Or is that something new that we'd like to take back into the workplace when we, hopefully many of us get back together again next week? And so it would be really interesting to really ask yourself those questions, but also to ask your team, and what a great way to reconnect everybody coming back in, to ask, look, what was really great about our culture pre-COVID, and what are those things we might have wanted to change? So an example might be, what did we reward and reinforce? You know, did we see success as somebody who sat in their seat for 10, 11 hours a day? Or what did we ignore? You know, did we all know that there was somebody in our team who perhaps didn't quite pull their weight or didn't behave to our expectations, but we all kind of just ignored that and said, oh, well, that's just who they are. I mean, I think what we're hearing very clearly from clients at the moment, a very clear common theme, is that businesses can't just thrive anymore, can't just survive anymore. We absolutely need to thrive. And that's as a result of economic pressures, but also all the changes all of us and all the reflections all of us have had in our own homes. And so it's really thinking around what is the culture that we need going forward to really reinforce that. So what signals do we send about our success, and how do we get our people on board so that we're all working towards the same culture? And I think what a really good way, or a really good tool that we're going to look at next, that can help us to identify that. So this slide, above the line, below the line culture, it's not new. Many of you might have seen it previously, but it's such a fantastic tool in so many ways, but potentially for getting us to think around, when we talk about culture, how actually do we describe that? You know, do we talk about, as Julie said, we have these amazing values in our business, but they're actually just a marketing tool or words on a wall? Do our behaviours support those values that we have? Now, what we know is that an above the line culture is a culture that is of growth, it is positive, it has such an impact on the way people feel working in your organisation. But also all the research tells us, and there's a lot of research around this, that above the line culture has such a positive impact on the bottom line, because the more connected and engaged people feel, the more productive they're going to work, which has got to be good for everyone. And so I'd really encourage you to use this tool, one as a reflection tool, so to think around what are some of those above the line behaviours we've got, but also to discuss it with your teams around what are some of the expectations or the behaviours we all want to see to have that above the line culture. So when we talk about above the line, we talk around some of the feelings we might have, might be that enthusiasm, that exploring possibilities, so innovation and curious. And what would help us would be, so some of the thinking some of the people in your team would have is, so how could I support you? I can see you're struggling with that. What can I do to help you? Or that's not quite working for us at the moment. What else could we do? Or actually, it did work really well for us previously, but it doesn't anymore because our environment has changed. And so some of the language we would want to see that would contribute to that above the line culture is the questions, you know, the when did that happen? How could we do that, do you think? Tell me more about that. That really exploratory language and questions. And I think it's a really good tool for leaders and business owners to use, because we can then start role modeling some of those expectations. You know, if we're expecting our people and our culture to be above the line, we need to model that. So it's a really good way of setting the expectations around what we see. Now, a good point I want to make around this slide is the red line, which divides the above the line and below the line culture. And I want to be really clear that this is a line of choice. So we all, as individuals in our personal lives and in our professional lives, we make a choice about how we respond and react in situations. So if we've got people in our team who are below the line, or sometimes we might even ourselves get below the line for whatever reason, we can make a choice to get people back above the line. And so this is a great tool, because what it can give is it can give us a bit of a feedback to people. You know, we might say, actually, you're operating below the line at the moment. And so what we might be seeing is we might be seeing some real frustration from people, or we might be seeing some impatience or some fear. So some of the language we might see might be that language that we would call a bit more negative or pessimistic. No, that's never going to work. Oh, we could try that, but oh, I'm just not sure. So it's the real that defensive, potentially aggressive or passively aggressive behaviour. And I think that this is where this tool comes into its own, because if we see people behaving in that way, either as leaders or as colleagues, you know, we can get alongside people and say, hey, actually what I'm seeing is, you know, you used to be really upbeat and positive, and what I'm seeing at the moment is a bit of negativity or resistance. What's going on? or what do we need to do either as individuals or as teams or as business leaders to shift us from that below the line culture or that below the line behaviour, which we all know is just so negative and destructive, to operating above the line. Because what we know is that we cannot lead from below the line.
So some really, really important points there, I think, from Mel, around making sure that we really are focusing on the things that we do want in place, you know, the behaviours and the mindsets that will actually enable our business to be successful. And I think moving forward, we just want to talk to you briefly on a couple of slides around some key points to really be thinking about. So absolutely ensure that health and safety is completely at the top of your agenda, and it's a big part of the culture. The reality is that people are going to be coming back into your business, and they are going to have a vigilant focus on their own health, and they are going to be quite demanding around the safety, and they want to know that you're taking it seriously and that you are doing the things that you say you're going to do, you know, that you're really committed to ensuring that it's a good place for them to return. So yes, absolutely, we need to have that in there as part of our culture. But I think also, really based on some of the conversations we've just been having, is we need to be thinking about brave leadership, and that we've got to be prepared to act. You know, you've got to be able to make the call, you've got to be able to drive the expectations and communicate those expectations that you have. You know, like in our leadership programs, one of the biggest challenges we often hear in feedback is that as employees, often we don't know what those expectations are. And that's because as leaders, we're not good at communicating it and being clear about, you know, what we need to be doing differently and what that's going to look like. So I think brave leadership and really taking responsibility for enabling that to happen. It's also about strengthening the relationships and making sure that, you know, that you have great relationships, or good, solid working relationships with everybody in your team. You know, as Julia said earlier, I'm noticing and I'm looking at, what are you doing as my leader that makes me feel that I matter to you, that I'm important to you? And what do you do when we walk back into that building? You know, do we all just go back to our same desks and carry on doing what we've always done, or do we actually have some very different conversations? Do I get to have that one-to-one time with you that is about you signaling that I really matter to you? So one of the things, I think one of the key points here is that we've got to be noticing, we've got to be present, and we've got to be curious. And so that's asking that question. Don't assume that anybody thinks or feels like you do, because they don't. Nobody feels the same. You know, we might be in the same storm and on the same stormy ocean, but we're not in the same boat. So we're all having very different experiences. And give people a voice. Make sure that you're creating more opportunities for people to speak, more opportunity for them to communicate with you or to communicate with whoever they need to in the organisation. And make sure that in that communication that you are clarifying reality, that you are being clear about where you're going as an organisation and what is important, but you're also giving hope, because I'm going to be looking at, you know, from you. I want to see it. And just a final point from me on this one is just, you know, keep on asking yourself, and don't be afraid to ask it of others as well, what tone am I setting? You know, who am I being as a leader, and what is the impact that I'm actually having? So from a general perspective, I think to move that organisation forward, or to move your culture forward, I think that they are some really important, you know, kind of overview points. But I'm going to hand it on to Julia now, who'll just have a bit of a conversation around some of the more specific things that you need to be thinking about to develop that culture, and Mel will finish with some things to consider for change.
Great, thanks Julie. So Julie actually mentioned right at the very start that our culture is not going to be the same moving forward. So now is a really brilliant opportunity for you to think about what it is that you do want your culture to be. And so how you go about developing your culture, what is it that you can do? I think the first thing is to put some energy into the vision and what it is, or what culture is it that you desire. Your culture is your brand. So think about what you want people to feel when they work with you. when they work with you and with your business. So this is not just about your employees. This is also about your suppliers, your shareholders, key stakeholders, customers. How do you want them to experience your business? Because that is your culture. So identify ways that every person can be engaged in a new way. Allow your people to get their fingertips or fingerprints in on what it is that you're wanting to create. We know that if we allow people to help co-create, that lifts their level of engagement. Encouraging your team to create, identify opportunities for the future, and then listen to them. It's really critical. Julie mentioned just on her previous slide all of the things about leadership. And one of the critical things with leadership is to be able to listen and allow your people that space to be heard. Come back to your values. Are they relevant? Are they alive? Or as Mel talked about earlier, and Julie, are they just a piece of paper up on a wall? You know, I think it's really easy to think of values as just words, and most of the time we do just walk past them, not taking any notice. But what's really important are the behaviours that underlie these values. Probably even more so than the words, the values themselves, is the behaviours, and aligning them to the culture that you wish to create. Are those behaviours above the line? As Mel said, she had some great stuff, you know, just coming back and checking, are we above the line, are we below the line? Remember, you create the culture, but it belongs to everybody. So if you provide that great purpose, that great vision with very clear behaviours, people are going to know what the culture is that you're trying to create, and they're going to follow. They're going to contribute as long as they have that vision, that purpose, and those clear behaviours. So during all of this, hunt the good stuff. Make room to bring some lightness and fun into the environment. It's really important. The key point in this slide for me is that you, as a leader, business owner, you need to role model the behaviours that you want to see in your business. People watch leaders. They're looking up to you to see how you behave. So it is really important that you are role modelling those behaviours. So through all of this, the change, it's important to understand how does this impact and impact on people, I guess, and what does this mean for us? So I'm going to hand over to Melissa, and Mel's going to talk a little bit more about the change.
Thanks, Julia. And I think it's so critical, because what we all know is that we're not going back to business as usual. So, and people are coming back into your workplace with different expectations. You know, for some people at home, working from home might have been an enlightening and amazing experience, and they're not looking forward to coming back. Others might be remote working, homeschooling, and trying to do everything, and they can't wait to get back to the new normal. And so it's that opportunity to think around for people, what are some of the behaviours you might be seeing? And some of them, as Julie talked about, what we're hearing from some of our clients is that we're not seeing all the positive behaviours you might expect with people coming back into work. Some of the behaviours we're seeing might be some quiet withdrawal. So, you know, those people who were generally really engaged at work are actually getting really really quiet or not contributing in the same way. And some of these behaviours might exist because their expectations are now different, or some of their behaviours may exist because of the monumental change we've gone through. And so what it means is that what we know is, as people, we don't actually fear change, because as humans we've evolved so much over time, and in our own lives we have change all the time. What we fear is that sense of loss, that sense of, actually, I used to know what normal looked like and what my job looked like, and I felt secure and I felt stable. And all of a sudden, I'm not sure if that stability is still there for me. And so that sense of loss in terms of, will I be able to do my job? In fact, will I still have a job? What does this new normal look like? You know, that creates the uncertainty. And so what I'd really encourage you to do is, when we're seeing behaviours that are different, is to understand what is the intention behind the behaviour. Because the danger is, if we react to the behaviour, so the negativity for an example, then we make judgments. Oh, here we go. Whereas if we can think, what is the intention behind the behaviour? What's going on for this person? And ask the question, then we can seek to understand it from their perspective. So we can try and see the change through their eyes. And look, I know, you know, I'm sure the first time you say to someone, oh, what's going on for you? The reaction you're going to get is, oh, fine, all good, sweet as, no problem. You know, I'm not suggesting people are going to open their hearts to you the very first time if this is different for you. But just keep going, persistency and tenacity, you know, keep asking the question. Or if you're getting the kickback or the resistance, you know, to say, look, something's really different, you know, these are the behaviours I'm seeing. Let's talk more about this and give people time to think and reflect. And also to understand that as a leader, leading organisations at the moment or trying to lead change, you don't have to have all the answers. This is a shared responsibility. We are all in this together. So your team are in this, you know, your colleagues, your people outside of work. So ask other people, and particularly your team and your people, what can we do differently? What do we need to do in order to survive and change? What do you want the culture to look like in our new way of working? What do we want to keep, but what do we want to discard and change? So don't feel that you've got to lead it right from the front and have all the answers. It's about all of us reconnecting, re-engaging and recommitting to a new norm or to a new way of working, a new and exciting culture.
Fantastic. Are we done there, Mel, or you've got a little bit
more?
Go
ahead. Nope, you go ahead.
Okay, cool. Julie, if I could ask you to kind of unmute yourself, we're going to get through some of the questions. I just want to go to one of the questions. So one of the key actions, would you like to build your culture? So as this was kind of from the poll that we're doing. The biggest response is seek feedback from the team. So I'm just interested to know from each of you, what's the one thing or the one question that you would each recommend that a leader or a manager could be asking their team to get feedback? What would you be suggesting? Mel, can I come to you first, please?
Yeah, sure. So I think I always follow positive psychology. So I think if we always start with actually what works really well around here. So you know, what is strong? What is strong in terms of us as a team? What is strong in terms of us as individuals? You know, and so really look at what works.
Great. Julia?
Wow, Mel kind of stole my thunder there. That's exactly what I was going to say. But yeah, I guess just to you know, reiterate her point, I think it is really important to understand what it is that's good. I'm just thinking, you know, sometimes it's also about what are some of the things that we can do to make this environment better. I mean, it's just kind of building on what Mel was saying. I think that's really just the key thing at this point in time.
Great. Julie?
Yeah, and I think it's, you know, what does good look like? So
yeah.
So if we're describing what it needs to look like, and what and possibly, I think always a good question for a leader is, you know, what do I need to do more of?
Great. Julie, if you could stop share so that all the attendees can just look at our lovely faces while we go through the questions, that would be great. Okay, so coming to some of the questions that we've had come through. Ant asks, is this relevant for the hospitality sector or just corporate office life? Julia?
Yeah, I thought I'd responded to that on live while it came through, but maybe I didn't. But absolutely, it's you know, culture is part of how we do things in an organisation, whether that be hospitality, retail, corporate. You know, cultures, and I said it earlier, culture is human. So whenever you get human beings together in an environment, in a group, we have created a culture. You'll have your own culture within your own family unit. So culture is everywhere. So yeah, absolutely, it's relevant for any and all the sectors, I guess. Yeah.
Julie, one of the things that seems to be quite prevalent with a lot of people is there's going into an office, they're going to a new environment. Things are going to be different. So for a lot of us, it's almost like starting with a blank page. What's the one thing that you would be recommending to do, and the one thing that you would be recommending not to do?
For each of the individuals? to be thinking about?
Yeah, for the culture. So, like you said, the culture left the building on the 23rd of March or whatever. So, as we kind of look to create a new culture, what's the one or two things that you'd be recommending that people should be doing and not doing as they kind of start again?
I think that one of a good thing to be thinking about doing is actually reconnecting with people, and maybe reconnecting in quite a different way, and that might be just seeking, like I went back into our building not so long ago, and one of the things I did was I probably connected with people that I might not have had the opportunity to do so before, and that was really important for me. So I think just seeking that opportunity to reconnect. And I think that the what not to do is to go back and think and want it to be the same, because it's not going to be the same. So if I want to go back and sit in the same place doing the same thing, that's going to be hard. So try and look for ways that where you can make it different for yourself.
Mel, when you were talking, you mentioned the word trust. How and what do we need to do to continue that level of trust that has been built up with a lot of people working remotely from home during this period?
Yeah, and I think that high trust environment, where we all just kind of left in a very quickly and started setting up from home, so many positives are going to come from this experience, and high trust being one of them. So let's bring that back into the workplace in terms of, setting people up to do work and to be successful. So allowing people to try things in a different way, which we might not have done before. And knowing that actually they've worked really efficiently or effectively or productively from behind. So let's allow them to continue to do that. So it's more autonomy, I think, we're going to see in the workplace, as well as, now if anyone wanted to build a business case for flexible working, now is absolutely the time.
Absolutely. Julia, coming to you. Jane asks, what are the practical steps we can take to enforce our culture we strive for?
Practical steps. So I think it's a little bit about what we've been talking about. It's about connecting with people. It's asking for feedback, getting that feedback from our people, and then, or actually, if I was to take it back one step, first, it's understanding, first of all, what is it that, what's the culture that I want for my business, or as a leader, how do I want my people to feel? I know that in large organisations, we talk about subcultures within a larger organisation. So as a leader, what is it that I want my people to experience from me is the culture that I am creating. So understanding what it is that you wish to create, how do you want to be as a leader, as a business owner? And then it's about establishing and creating and knowing what that is, in terms of your vision, your strategy, but then going out and seeking that feedback from your people. What is it that they need? What is it that they would like in order to be successful? What works for them? What's not working for them? And then pulling together, whether it be a working party or a small group, whatever you want to call it, to go, right, what can we do in order to create what it is that we need to create?
So just picking up on that, Julia, because the fourth thing that people were going to focus on was about building the new culture moving forward. At what point should people be thinking about the culture that they want? Should they be spending the time rapidly thinking about it now?
Okay. Yeah, okay. Absolutely now.
Right. Yeah, so with the with everything that's going on, people are going back into work. They're thinking about the supply chain, etc. How and what should they be doing specifically? Really kind of make it, as simple as possible. What's the one or two things that they should be doing to ensure that they're getting on top of the culture?
Talk to their people. I think that's number one, is listen to what they have to say. And then it's, pulling all of that in and going, right, as a result of all of this feedback, I'm hearing my people say that actually they prefer to work the split shifts. We work in a manufacturing environment, for example, and actually the split shifts that we've been operating in level 3 has been really working well for me in my personal situation. So listening to what your people have to say, I think is probably the critical point right now.
just taking that further, picking up on one of the questions from Jane. Julie, coming to you, what format would you take to ask these questions? Would it be survey? Would it be meetings? Would it be individuals? Obviously, we need to collect the data and get a feel for what's going on fairly quickly, but time is against us. What would you be recommending?
What I'd be recommending is that, like, if it's a bit larger organisation, then I think that it's about the direct leaders, the direct team members, you know, coming together as collections, and even if they're working one-to-one. But I think that, you know, in a smaller organisation, ideally that owner or that leader will get alongside everybody, because I think if we're really going to demonstrate that we're noticing, we're curious, and we're really present, it's got to be done face to face. And I think that will be the key. Like, it's too easy to hide behind documentation, you know, that we fill in a questionnaire, you get the questionnaire, I never know what you're going to do with it, and I never see anything from it. But if I'm actually sitting with you and saying, hey, you know, what do we want to happen in this organisation, I'm going to engage in that. And I think, and that's important. It's the interactive conversation rather than enforcement. I think, you know, the point before you said, what do we do to enforce it? We want people to engage in it, so they've got to be a part of it, because then I want it to happen as well.
Julie, do you think, if possible, people should be getting off this, after getting off this webinar, should be getting on the phone and speaking to people if possible, while some people are at home, and just starting that engagement quickly?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Mel, coming to you. We're all on wage cuts and have agreed as a company to share the burden until things get better. How do we then address the issue of some staff having to work slightly longer hours due to their individual responsibilities? We are reluctant to go down the track of preferential treatment and wish to remain consistent with our message.
Yeah, and it's such a challenge. I mean, we've got many clients, like perhaps some of you out there who you know, passed on wage subsidies or might have topped up to 70% or 80%. I think it's honesty, it's being authentic, explaining the rationale around the context, you know, the reason why we're doing this. You know, to really engage those people, because that is actually probably going to be the reality for a lot of organisations moving forward. You know, there's some of the research out there that some of the economic hits are going to come in waves, and so I think it's just being really real around the reason we're doing this, and how appreciative we are of you engaging in it. You know, whether it's wage cuts or hourly cuts. But this is why we're doing it, and this is our intention of doing it, and our expectations. You know, so it's that real, it's that raw leadership, really. It's that authenticity and honesty.
Fantastic. Last couple of questions coming through. If you guys could put your contact details into the chat box just to make sure that everybody's got them, that would be great. Julia, if I could come to you, how do I decide who can work from home, or how I can ensure as a business owner I'm offering more flexibility in the workplace whilst being fair to everyone?
Oh, that's a really good question, isn't it? It's quite a how do you decide who gets to work from home? You know, my immediate response is let's flip a coin or pull straws, but no, it's not quite like that. It's about, first of all, you know, my immediate thoughts is it possible for the person to work from home? And I know for a lot of people over the last 6 weeks, we have been working remotely because we've been able to. We have been able to set up from home. But there's a lot of jobs out there that you can't. And it may be it's a customer facing, it's retail, it might be hospitality, you know. So let's just park those to one side, because, you know, it's not practical to work from home in that space, ideally. But it's about, okay, can the role be done from home? Do I have the technology? Have I got, you know, all of that, the licensings, all of those kind of computer stuff is number one. But then it's also about, okay, for the individual themselves, do they have the self-motivation, the discipline to be able to work from home? Because I think we can all acknowledge, and I know myself personally, how difficult it can be on some days. You get up, and being able to separate that work and home has been really difficult over the last few weeks, and some people are really are really good and very clever at being able to do that. So that's what I mean by self-discipline. But yeah, is the individual, does the individual, can they do that themselves? Or, and I'm not sure if that's really answering the question for what was really asked. Is it more of, how do I make sure that it's fair for everybody? Okay, so that person over there is working from home, but hey, I want to work from home, so why can't I? You know, and it's about getting the team together and having those conversations maybe as a team.
Yeah, and I think that's the case, is that each company is going to be different, and
absolutely. And every situation is going to be different. But if we've got that team conversation going on and we understand our needs from each individual, then we go, oh, actually, Adam, yes, you can work from home for this period of time if it's Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, because it works best for you, and for whatever reason. And people seem to understand when we talk about it.
Great, thank you. I'm going to ask the last question, Julie, just before I ask Sean to wrap up. If I got to ask all of you to just be putting in the chat box, what's been your one key takeaway from today? So all of the attendees on this webinar, what's been the one key takeaway for you as you think about moving forward? Julie, last question to you, because this for me is a really important one, and I want to make sure that we give it the time that it deserves. Some of our employees are really struggling and feeling very anxious about getting back into the workplace. How can we help them?
Yeah, I think it's being able to fully understand what's going on for them, and so that means giving them the time, like asking the questions, spending the time with them, but also looking at, we don't want to be counsellors, so we need to be able to be in a position where we can provide advice and guidance on where support might be available. It's a bit like an EAP scheme, really. Is that actually I'm understanding your expectations, and I'm going to be, and we will do what we can within the business to manage that. But outside this, like for example, if if a person's got a lot of anxiety, then it might be appropriate that they do actually seek some professional assistance to kind of explore that. And so it's not judging it, it's not undermining it, it's actually just about being very real with people, that I'm being understanding, and I want to make sure that you can get the assistance that you need. So we will do this within the organisation, and we'll check in on you and make sure that that things are going well for you. But outside this, I might need to be able to provide a bit of additional support for you. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. Sean, can you just close us out with your final thoughts, please?
Yeah, sure. Thanks everyone for joining, Adam for facilitating, and big thanks to Julia and Mal. It's been such a great topic, and it shows that there's a real interest. We've got over 80 people on the webinar today, so it's definitely a real topic that people are looking for some support with. So this team at Baker Tilly, they are a registered partner of Venture Taranaki. So once again, if you need some support, we've got people and services just like these guys ready to go. We're going to have this recording available, so I'll email it out to you, and I'll also send out invitation to the next webinar. So that's going to be this Thursday, the 14th at 11:30, and it's going to be hosted by Paul Rangiwahia, and he's going to be presenting on mental health and gaining a mental warranted fitness. So that's a great opportunity, not just for business owners, but all your staff as well. So that's it for us for another webinar, and haere rā.
Thank you.